Hey everybody, Ian Golden here in the DJ Tech Tools studio with the brand new Kontrol S8. Today I'm going to walk you through this amazing new product and show you all the features that you need to know about Native Instruments' new flagship DJ controller. First, Native Instruments has expanded the mixer section. You now have a fully functional mixer that's not only taller and slightly wider, but also has 4 analog inputs for CDs, turntables, and 2 microphones. The mixer also has full switchable crossfader control for all 4 channels, and a crossfader curve, and a fully removable crossfader section so that you can put new or upgraded crossfaders on each of the line faders and the crossfader. The deck section is all new. They've gone ahead and taken the F1 and the X1 concepts and merged them into one deck. Here you've got 4 faders and 8 buttons for launching remix clips or cue points, loops, or even freeze mode. Of course, the jog wheels are gone. Instead, you've now got a high-resolution color screen, and you've got a touch strip that's useful for needle drops and also for pitch bending. So my first impressions and the big things you need to know, first of all, it's large. The S8 comes in not only wider, but taller than the S4 by a significant margin. It's also pretty heavy. There's a fair amount of technology in here, and it's a relatively heavy beast. Something that you could definitely take on the road, but would probably be quite comfortable staying in your home studio or sitting in one place. Of course, it can be used without the screen. If you've got software that allows you to close your laptop, you can do so. Everything you need is right here, including browsing for tracks. The only thing missing would be searching and sorting columns in your browser window. It does require a power supply, but that's so it can fully power all of these screens, LEDs, and the sound card, and some nice loud headphone outputs. The S8 has a lot of functional improvements that I'm really happy about, and I think you will be too. One of the most basic is new filter on-off buttons. So if you are using your filters, you can be absolutely sure that it is indeed off and not accidentally cutting off just a little bit of your low end or doing little filter input effects. Something like that. Next big thing are the full input section on the back. You've got 4 independent switchable line or phono inputs. So you can either be mixing 4 sources from Traktor or 4 analog sources or any combination of them. If you wanted to line up 2 turntables, you could use turntables running in here for full DVS vinyl control. And of course, on the front, we've got a real mixer section. We've got the 4 assignable crossfader points for A, B, C, and D. Each channel can be assigned to left or right. And then you've got a full crossfader curve. Another functional improvement, NI tells me that the faders in this guy are all completely custom. What they've done is put the magnetic jacks on the underside of the fader, whereas usually they're on the top. And this is going to go ahead and significantly reduce the amount of failure you see due to drinks and stuff getting into the faders through these slots here. One of the bigger functional improvements is just overall input-output convenience. You've got a mini headphone output and a 1/4 inch headphone output, depending on your headphones. You also got 2 full microphone inputs, input 1, input 2, and these mics can be routed into one of these channels where you've got gain, EQ, and filter on your mic. And of course, you can route that mic to Traktor effects and do some really wild stuff. The S8 also has some really exciting new features, stuff that we have not seen before in Traktor that this opens up. Most notably, you might notice the freeze button right here, which gives you freeze control over loops. So if we get a track going here, you notice I can chop up this loop. And if I change the length of the loop, and do some pretty cool effects relatively easily. You'll notice that, of course, I've now got a new loop control that I'm using. Instead of having an LED readout that tells me the loop length, I can see what loop is running on the screens, which I have to say is a whole lot better. And in general, these screens are kind of awesome. I like not looking at the computer, and I like being able to just focus on the controller. Aside from searching, I found myself not touching the computer very much when I've got this thing plugged in. So, other cool new features that this controller has. One amazing thing I think you guys are going to really like, if we switch decks here, so we just switched from a regular deck to a remix deck. Go ahead and turn these guys down. We've now got effect sends on individual voices of the remix decks. So I've got an effect send on this organ. You can kind of hear that. And we'll go modify that effect. We're going to switch over to the effect now. Add it to just the hi-hat, and so you can change the amount of the effect on each of these voices. Very cool. Another thing, super musical and sort of techno-oriented, is the ability to change the pitch of some of these samples. So there's the hi-hat going up and going down. So you've got pitch adjust, and most importantly, you've got pitch send, which I do think is really, really cool. Another really cool feature is that you now actually know what your effects are. These effects knobs, while they look like the old wet, dry, 1, 2, 3, 4-button configuration, are actually touch sensitive. So when I change them, let's get another track going here. Let's maybe bring these guys up. And so you notice that when I moved the wet, dry, the screen changed, and I now saw exactly what I was controlling. Pretty cool. And then if I wanted to change one of these effects, I just press the Effect Select button and browse through and change things out. Let's do the Mulholland Drive. So it's really easy to go ahead and dig into your effects right on that screen. Super cool. So what's changed? What are some things that are missing or things that have changed into new functions? Well, the first thing, and probably the most significant, is the loop functionality. You've got this loop button here, which you can change. You no longer see the number of the loop, but you see a more detailed description of exactly what you're looping, which is pretty cool. And of course, if you hold down Shift, you can move around and get around in the track. Very cool. The jog wheels, of course, are gone. Instead, you have a touch strip. And while I wasn't as big of a fan of the touch strips on the X1 Mark II, I did find these touch strips were much better implemented. So if I've got a track going over here, and I want to get this guy all synced up, turn off sync, I can sort of push him back or push him forward with a little bit of a nudge feeling. And of course, you've got this LED feedback right here, which shows you the relative position of one beat grid versus the other. So in this case, I'm pushing the track back a little bit, and here I'm pushing it forward. And with this implementation, I found it pretty easy to beat match and didn't really miss the jog wheels, which took up a huge amount of real estate. So finally, with the Kontrol S8, it's all about the screens. Of course, the idea is that you want to ditch the laptop. Well, in principle at least. We still need it to run music, but we can close the lid, tuck it in the corner, and forget about the fact that we are working off of a computer. Instead, you've got these screens. And the screens have a couple of major key features or functions that you guys might dig, and here are my impressions of each. The biggest one, of course, is browse. You can go ahead, select a playlist, and then see the tracks in that playlist, including their key. Go ahead and select a track and load it. Great. Then you've got the full track view, you've got the overview here, and you've got the zoomed in view there. Do a loop and you can change it. It's pretty handy. Scrolls through the track. I found that this was big enough for me to really see what was going on. If you want to see both of your decks at the same time, there's a little button here. I found this is probably less useful. Now the information has become too small, but I've got my deck D and my deck B on the same screen, so I can kind of see what's going on. Personally, I prefer to just switch between them, and you see it slides right between the two different decks. I really like this remix deck overview. It's really easy to figure out what's going on. One thing you might not like is that you can only control 2 rows of your remix set at the same time, but I didn't really find it was a big deal. And you can, of course, scroll down into other sets if you wanted to. But I was pretty happy with just having 2. In general, those remix cells are maybe a little overkill. You don't really need 32 different loops. One of the nice things is a little bit of a dynamic view of what these buttons are doing exactly. So if I've got my remix set going, I can scroll between these different functions. I can control the filters, for example. Let's filter out this synth. That sounds pretty good. Now let's add an effect. There's the effects end. Kill that kick. Sounds pretty good. And finally, I can control that effect. So right now I'm controlling effect unit 4. So you could control all 4 effects units, 1, 2, 3, 4. And anytime you touch any of them, you see the information for that effect unit. Pretty powerful. So the final thing I really liked about the screens was the freeze mode. Really, really cool. So if we get this track going, I have no idea what this is going to actually sound like. Let's go into freeze mode. Now you see what's chopped up and how you can get different voices. Let's maybe go to a different section of the track by holding down Shift. So I found that the screen was high enough resolution so I could really see the different parts and then understand which thing I wanted to grab as I'm scrolling. So that, folks, are all the things that you need to know about the new Kontrol S8. Overall, I gotta say, it's a really cool controller. While it's a lot larger and a lot more expensive than the Kontrol S4 or the Kontrol S2, you get a lot of functionality, and I think there's a number of things in here that you're gonna have a lot of fun playing with. Most importantly, by being able to put away the laptop for the first time in a long time, you might actually be able to begin enjoying DJing again, focusing on the music, and getting away from laptop face and getting back into the joy of playing music again. I hope you guys enjoyed this overview of the Kontrol S8. I've been spending a lot of time with this controller, and I'm going to be spending a lot more time with it over the next month. When this thing goes for sale, I hope you'll consider purchasing it through djtechtools.com. Not only are you going to be supporting our community by putting your dollars back into the resources that help you DJ, but we're going to make it a really, really big no-brainer for you by including a 1-hour free tutorial with me teaching you how to use this controller, my personal mapping for the controller, which unlocks a lot of new features, and a 10-minute bonus video that'll go into a bunch of tricks, tips and techniques that I developed for doing really interesting things on the Kontrol S8. Thanks as always for your support, guys, and we'll see you around the web.